Hey everyone, this is Mr. Long Short. We're going to talk about second printings, late printings. Why are these books in so much demand currently? When do they matter? When might they not matter? And what the future looks like. So let's start out. What are late printings? Late printings are effectively books that sold out that retailers wanted to sell more of. So they went back and they ordered some more of them. The publisher reprinted them and restocked the shelves. For the longest time, these books were viewed as inferior. They were second, right? Who wants to be second when you can have the first? This has all changed in the modern market, but I think it's important to understand why there's an opportunity in this space. And why that opportunity is definitely changing. But in order to get our arms around that, we have to go back to the beginning. So back in the day, right, late printings were indistinguishable from their first printings, right? Effectively, retailers were trying to give their customers what they missed. And as a result, there was an inferiority around these particular books. You couldn't tell what printing they were by looking at them, so you had to be careful. Nobody wanted the late printings because there was nothing special about them, right? In order to find out what printing it was, you had to open up the book and look closely. I don't know if we can see this, but here we go. Second printing. Well, that's a piece of junk. Let's throw it away. And that mindset persisted in the collecting community for a very long time, up until probably, inside of the last 10 years. Nobody wanted the second printing when they could have the first printing. But things started to change. When publishers started to make second printings clearly distinguishable from their first printings, they started to have collecting value. And this started slowly. I can think back to books like Anti-Venom. There's just some late printings that really started to move the needle. That book's probably 10 years old now, maybe not quite that old, but this all of a sudden sort of changed the mindset from the end collector. We're reaching a point today where there's definitely a mania going on, and it's not completely unjustified, but I think collectors need to be careful about what they're paying for late printings and why they may or may not be worth what they think. And frankly, this is no different than any other part of the speculation market. But just because something's a late printing doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have value. Just because it's scarce doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have value. It may. But it feels in some ways late printings right now are what variants were during their first go around. So it's something to go into with your eyes open. And so let's talk about sort of some of the things that are going on right now. The most relevant example I can give of a late printing that has gone justifiably crazy is the Venom 3 third print with Null on the cover. That's Null's first appearance, and naturally, when a character makes a first appearance in a comic, it's more desirable if they're on the cover. The first printing had Venom on the cover. Actually, you know what? I think I might have one here. So here's the first printing. Had Venom on the cover. That's actually Miles up there, right up near the trade dress. Very cool cover in its own right? Nothing against it. But then all of a sudden, you get a second printing. Also, not anything directly related to Null. And this third printing comes out, right? This third printing comes out. It's fairly heavily ordered. It had about a 10,000 print run. But there's Null right on the cover. And all of a sudden, that becomes the book everybody wants. Um, two reasons, right? He's on the cover, and it's harder to get. The number one driver of collectability is availability of a book. The harder it is to get, the more you're going to want it, right? Plain and simple. As we've moved into sort of the modern generation of collecting, like everything else, information is readily available. If a new character makes an appearance, by and large, that's going to be well telegraphed. Everybody's going to be ordering that book heavily before FOC. And as a result, the print count's going to go through the roof and the collectability is going to go absolutely down, right? And it ruins it. Late printing sort of changed the game there a little bit. And it started to make the hobby fun again. For a lot of us who were on to late printings early on, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. You could pick up all sorts of really cool books that nobody else was paying attention to. Within the last even 3 months, that has definitely changed. A lot of the books that I've been hunting in the late printing space have started to get gobbled up, understandably so. But what that does actually is alter the current market for late printing. So, one of the craziest examples of a second printing that I can think of is Empire #1, the second print, which came out the same day as the first print. Yeah, so that's right. Came out the second day as the first print. I don't even know how that is possible. I guess it came off the press a little bit later that day. But this is the mania that late printings are creating. I mean, another one that I think is worth pointing out is this book, right? Which is an amazing book in its own right. But when news broke that this book was being reprinted, it seems like everybody went out and ordered it by the armload. I would guess that the print run on this book was probably in the neighborhood of 35,000. It's a pure guess that we'll find out in a few months. I'm willing to wager that before long, there's going to be some book where you're going to have a print run of 50,000 for the first print run. A hyper cool late printing comes out, and you're going to see 75,000, right? There's going to be more demand for the late printing than the initial printing. And at that point, the whole thing turns upside down. But that's how the market evolves and what makes it fun. So the reason late printings are in demand is scarcity value, plain and simple, right? And when you have demand for a character and there's a book that's printed at a fraction of other books and collectors are seeking that out, it's going to get gobbled up and it's naturally going to push the price higher. Now, there is some craziness going on, and if I've learned anything in this game is not to argue with the market. The market is what the market is. At any given time, the market is right. You can argue whether or not the price is going to stay where it is, but for any given transaction, assuming there's no nonsense going on, the price that book sells for is what the going rate was at that point in time. You don't always have to agree with it. I certainly wouldn't recommend that you chase prices. I don't think that ends well for most collectors. That said, that is what that book was worth to that buyer at that point when that transaction happened. So, really hot spec right now in late printings is around Dylan. Dylan's a problematic character for me, a character that I actually enjoy reading very, very much. But I don't know how to spec Dylan, right? A lot of what's going on with Dylan is who is the character he's ultimately going to become. I think there's going to be a book that Donny Cates drops on us that Dylan is going to take on a new likeness. And that very well may be the book that people want to get behind. You're right, Dylan, when he appeared in issue number 7 or issue number 9, there are late printings around those that are starting to go for crazy prices. Listen, I don't begrudge anybody. I've got them. But I would be careful of spending that kind of money on a book like that. But they're trading at those prices because they're hard to get, right? And so people ask why is there not that many of them out there. And people want to make a bet on Dylan, and by all means, make that bet. Just be careful of what you're betting on. And listen, this has been going on for a long, long time, but just because it happens to be a late printing, that character has to root itself, right, in the community and be a character that people care about for a long time, and it has to be the book that people identify with that character. That's no different from any other spec. I really think about late printings up until sort of the most recent environment as variants that retailers forgot to order, or they forgot to order in size, right? These are books, different covers that they just didn't order, and that's what made them appealing. As later printings get more and more demand, the likelihood that this is going to go away, this opportunity. Now, how long does it go on for? I don't know. Is there 7th, 8th, 10th printings? Yeah. And those will probably be lower than the 2nd and the 3rd. So, maybe we're looking way down the road at what some of these opportunities are, but it will exhaust itself eventually. That said, there are some interesting books out there. I had a video where I talk about this Spider-Gwen number 0, 2nd printing, which is really the 7th reprint of Edge of Spider-Verse number 2. Of all of the Edge of Spider-Verse number 2 reprints, this one is overwhelmingly the hardest one to find. And as a result, it has value to me. We'll see if the end market has the same point of view. But when you're hunting books, right, keep an eye open for something like that. Some books that I like to point to in my collection. So here's the first appearance of Invincible Iron Man number 9. This seems to be the book the market is acknowledging as Riri Williams' first full appearance. We can debate all day long. I think there's a case to be made for issue number 7. But as I talked about in the past, maybe it's not owning 7 or 9, but 7 and 9. But regardless, this was the first printing. There's a variant. There's a variant out there that's fetching some pretty substantial prices. But for me, for my money, and please keep in mind this is just my opinion. I am not telling you what the right answer is. Who the heck knows? I like this one. Right? I like this one. All right, we got Riri on the cover. There's far fewer of them. It's probably 6,000 or 7,000 of these. Maybe 10% of what the print run was on that other book. For me, this is the book that I like. Now, it's in 9.6. My other one's in 9.8. Everybody's like, well, wouldn't you like your 9.8 better? I think one thing you're going to learn about me is grade doesn't really excite me too much. 9.6, 9.8, 9.4, 9.2. I mean, these are minor differences. You have to remember, in every other grading category, right, they're in half-point increments. So you get 8, 8.5, 9, right? So now we're talking about, 0.2 increments. I think people go nuts for the wrong reason there, but that's just my point of view. Right? You'll see I have 9.8s back here. The 9.8s that I have in my collection are not books that I went out and bought. They're books that I graded that happen to come back 9.8. I don't chase those. I get why people do. But if you're talking about a relatively scarce book, I think people are overpaying for some of those, or at least the value, right? Maybe they're not overpaying. Maybe the 9.8s are valued correctly. Maybe the 9.6s and the 9.4s are wildly undervalued. Maybe that's really where the value is in the market, rather than people overpaying for 9.8s. Let's not argue that. Maybe that's the fair value for those. It's just the 9.6s and the 9.4s are where the value in the market is. So something to keep an eye open for. That's my philosophy. I don't pretend that it's everybody's. Certainly when you're looking to sell a book, you'd rather it be graded as a 9.8 than a 9.6, as you can get more for it. But if I'm out there looking to buy slabs, I'm happy to buy them 9.4, 9.6 and feel very good about having them in my collection. I don't feel the need to upgrade a book like that because it's effectively already perfect. So if late printings are starting, the opportunity starting to get arbed away by the market, where's the new opportunity? Where's the new crack in the market? Well, I've got an idea of where that might be. Just my point of view, but I think if anybody follows the things that I talk about, the books that I write about, I do like to look for cracks in the market. And I think the biggest crack in the market right now are these Walmart variants. Like, what? Walmart variants? Who cares about those? So these are late printings. They're variants. Maybe it's some mix of both. They're effectively modern newsstands. I love modern newsstands. There's not many of them. I go out and hunt them whenever I can. Newsstands don't really exist anymore. Although I will tell you what, I get schooled every day on how late newsstands went on. I believe for the longest time that Marvel ended in 2011 and DC ended in 2013. Just had a conversation with somebody today who showed me a DC newsstand from 2017. So newsstands hung around a lot longer than I think most of us believe, or certainly I believed. Don't want to speak for anybody else. But these Walmart variants are super attractive to me because A, not all Walmarts carry them. Can't figure out exactly which ones do and which ones don't. I've been all over the Northeast just popping into Walmarts, and it's amazing how many of them don't carry these comics. I haven't actually identified anybody I can talk to explain how that works, but they're not available in every store. And the one thing that I do know is that when they do get a new box of these Marvel comics in, there's only 3 of any cover per box. I think there's probably 30 packs in a brand new box. So 10 different books, 3 of each. So you get to 30. I would point out, I was researching, the Strange Academy is super hot right now. What's the right play here? If you look on Go Collect, outside of the 1 in 50 variant, and I believe the Peach Momoko Virgin variant, in 9.8, this Walmart variant goes for the highest price. It's $190, I believe, was the last sale for this particular cover. You can find these on eBay right now in the $30 range. I think once people start waking up to these are going to become the next late printing, right? These Walmart variants. So something to think about. The game is always changing. There's always going to be a new opportunity to spec on. For me, I like these little quirky areas of the market. This book over here kind of sums up to me, right? I'm a big Gwenpool fan. I don't think she gets the respect she deserves. Second printing, woo, right? That's how I feel about these late printings. But these little gaps in the market are particularly appealing to me. Gaps in the market can be late printings, it can be a newsstand, certainly high ratio variants. Big fan of those books. For the longest time, variants got a bad rap, but anything that limits the supply is an attractive area to be speculating on. And this is simply the reason why second printings are going as crazy as they are. Really for no other reason. Thanks for listening. Happy to talk about these topics a little bit more in the future. Leave some messages. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. Happy to engage in dialogue about this. You can argue all day long whether they should be worth more or less. The reality is they're worth what they are because they're harder to come by.